Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. So for those of you who have been following the past few days, I've done 2 videos regarding PvP, and I wanted to go ahead and say thank you to those who participated and gave their feedback. I don't PvP, but I decided, based on some advice from some other content creators, the vibes, Cold Boy, just to make a video bringing awareness to the state of the PvP game. And I've done so because I usually try to even do these once in a while. So I'm glad they, kind of put it my way. And I'm happy to have done it. I'm happy for the feedback that we got. The only thing is, we don't know if they're going to actually take it and do anything about it, because there's this sentiment within the community that the game is supposedly at its end of life. I don't think so. All the events that have happened have caused a huge issue within the community, but I don't think it ends the game. I think there's still a lot of things that still need to be delivered, and year 2 will have its seasons run, and then we'll see what happens from there. I personally think there'll be a year 3. I personally think there'll be an addition of a bigger dark zone, because they're going to actually want to smooth out their reputation with this community if they're going to sell us something else. Because either there's a Division 3 in the works, I don't know, but I do know there's an Avatar game that's in the works, and this community will be the community that they will market to. So I won't be surprised to see big changes in the Division, just to kind of make things, just to mend relationships, or just to kind of appease this community before they drop another launch when everybody's really happy. That's what happened at the end of life of the Division 1. I wish they would just go ahead and bring out a polished game in the beginning, so they don't have to suck up to their player base, instead deliver to their player base and build a solid reputation. But that's still not going to be able to convince a lot of gamers nonetheless. People have made up their minds that they're not going to be dealing with this studio, but some of us are going to stick with whatever comes. I understand the pain points. I understand that this game is not perfect and can get really tiresome and can get burdensome in many cases. We're humans, and I understand that. And I would just say, if there was a better game out there, or a game that had a similar concept, I would be happy to play it. In fact, the similar game that's coming out to this game is Marvel's Avengers, and I've created a second YouTube channel, shameless plug, that is going to be highlighting superhero games and all that. And that was one of the reasons I made that channel, including some Batman game that we don't know when the heck it's going to be released. But that is the introduction to the video. What I wanted to get into with this video today is basically the conversation about blues and reds and utility builds. But basically the utility, the skills, and the all full red builds. There's been a lot of conversation in the community that the all red builds are pretty much the only viable builds in the game. But I think that is a very strange way to look at things, because they say, people say things whenever, you make a video regarding skills. You see a lot of, the dissent in the community saying, well, let's stop pretending that the M1A is the best thing in the game right now. But the truth is, the M1A is not supposed to be doing what it's doing. The M1A is hitting like a marksman rifle, like a bolt action rifle, when in reality it's supposed to be hitting like a semi-automatic rifle. So that's the problem that's already with it. But if we were to take mathematics into consideration, there'll be other red builds or other build variations that work, and would actually see much more clearly how important these utility builds are, which is actually the Division experience. I think that's what Tom Clancy's Division was kind of sold on, that you're supposed to have these skills that complement your build, complement your team, and do some good work, and you can incorporate them into your entire build or your entire playstyle. But if it wasn't for the brokenness of the M1A, gun builds have nothing against skill builds. Skill builds do some really serious damage that gun builds cannot put out in some instances, but it is only left to a specific category. And let me be clear, skill builds were not designed to replace gun builds in any way. I don't think that's the case. Even in PvP, many people who are saying, red builds are the only viable builds, are most of the same people saying that skill builds are annoying. The idea is that once skill builds become very powerful in a game that is a somewhat of a shooter, it becomes a weird, conundrum. And that's what we're seeing in PvP right now, where a status effect build can vaporize your entire team if you're not paying attention. But in PvE, that's not necessarily the case. The skills, they do a lot of damage. They vaporize a good amount of enemies, but they're not designed to just do it as efficiently as maybe a sniper build or a marksman build would do in the weapon damage category. So I think that pitting, one against the other is not a fair comparison, because once the M1A goes away and they increase some other gun damage talents and buff them, now the M1A is not going to, I'm just saying once they actually adjust its damage, or buff other things to make them viable, we're going to see other players come into the meta, and still in PvE, the complementary builds are still they're going to be very, very worthwhile to do in the game. But then if we even look at raw damage numbers right now regarding DPS, you can still say that the artillery turret and even the oxidizer and some of the weird skills are able to deal out some really intense damage straight off the bat. Some damage that your weapon will have to put out some numbers regarding the weapons, regarding your weapon for them to be able to achieve that, or you have to risk a lot. So let's take, for instance, the artillery turret versus, say, the M1A build. Say somebody is putting on the perfect sacrifice and they're able to be doing about 30% raw damage, or just even using the glass cannon talent at 25%. And then somebody else is even doing that kind of damage using some kind of an M1A or rifle build. The truth is, the person who is using the skill build has a better advantage of cover than you do. They can stay in cover, sneak around, and apply their damage and get back into cover. Whereas you, who has the weapon damage, you have to either have somebody who has a skill that can keep you alive, or you have to maybe, just hope that the enemy NPCs don't, focus on you in order for you to be able to get out a few bullets with your glass cannon. Some people know what I'm talking about. Somebody left a comment on my video saying, I think I may have actually triggered the aggro bug. I always get aggro from enemy NPCs every time. And this kind of thing you can understand. And if you're getting aggro, if you have an artillery turret, you could just keep aiming and keep dealing damage with that kind of a weapon and using it to destroy enemy NPCs from a good distance. And then the second aspect is many of these skills, they can affect enemies behind cover. This is where PvP suffers a lot, because it seems like the developers have already made a cover-based, so-called cover incentive PvP, but then you have skills like the Oxidizer and you have skills like the Fire Starter that can literally catch you behind cover if they land around your AoE. So that kind of almost negates it and frustrates players. But in PvE, these enemy NPCs, sometimes they will come out and run around. Sometimes they'll just sit in cover and try to waste your time. If you have something like the artillery turret or even the Fire Starter or even the chem launcher Oxidizer, these things can actually be very good for you to deal good damage behind cover towards enemy NPCs. And then you also have the side of building a tank build, which there even is the conversation of, is it even necessary for you to use a 6 blue or defensive mods to try to gain the 6 skill tiers for a powerful shield? Or do you just go 6 of the utilities to get the skill tier 6 and then maybe even run something like the technician specialization and the artificer hive, which is going to be refreshing your shield over and over and over again? So as a tank, you can actually do some pretty good work with your tank build. And I know many people have said, there's no tank that can withstand, the amount of damage that, enemy NPCs deal out. Well, yes, you're not supposed to stand there, infinitely. You're supposed to, at some point, be able to mitigate some of the damage if it's continuous, and then find cover to be able to regenerate your shield. That's the good thing about the shield. It has a holstered regeneration and even a non-holstered regeneration as well. So if you move behind cover a little bit while your shield is procced, you can still get it to regenerate, and if you holster it back, it'll regenerate faster. So the concept is still good. And if you have an artificer hive with the technician specialization, that grants you some really serious refresh on your skills that have already been deployed. So there is the side of skills being in a very solid place right now in the game. And it's really sad that as skills have reached this place, weapon damage has not gained too much diversity. Weapon damage builds anyways has not gained too much. I wouldn't say diversity. I would say it hasn't gained too much, flexibility, that everything is somewhat now relegated to having this broken, mess of a generic M1A type deal. And what even makes it really funny is the M1A used to be one of the best weapons in the Division 1. If you guys remember, the first wave M1A specifically used to be one of the best weapons in the Division 1. And it's quite weird now that we have another M1A crisis in the game. And I just have to, scratch my head and go, how are these things spilling over? And even then, it wasn't a good thing. Now, it's also not a good thing, because then it was a problem with aiming as well. If you guys really remember, when we had the Deadeye chess piece, people were running around and actually hip firing the M1A. The classic, can you imagine what we call the M1A QB? People in PvP were hip firing that weapon in order to deal deadeye damage. Can you imagine how oh my gosh, people say PvP in the Division 2 is bad. You should have been in that meta, the meta that had Reclaimer explosives, where you could not even stand and fire. Everybody was running around the dark zone with Reclaimer and explosive rounds, 4-man teams, everybody staggering all over the place, everybody shooting everybody. Nobody could fire a bullet. Division 1 PvP in the early days. Trust me, ladies and gentlemen, in PvP, what you have right now, bad as it may be, it has never gotten as bad as that spamming of Deadeye with a with a rifle. Then they used to be called marksman rifles. They didn't call the so-called M1A right now a rifle, but just imagine that, people running around and just spamming that thing and doing chicken dance. It was terrible. Very, very much so. So I guess that brings us to looking at one strength in the game and the weaknesses that surround him, and how these weaknesses need to be solved, very much. Because if you guys think about everything that's going on right now in the state of the game, where that designer said, when they looked at some of the numbers for, the operator, the gloves, the contractor's gloves, and the Fox Spear knee pads, he said that those numbers were a little fudged. But remember, this was the guy who came in TU6 and started to tweak skills and actually got skills to a good place. And so I think he might be at the reins now of dealing with a lot of the weapon stuff as well, because Mr. Thailander has not been seen in any of these state of the games or any of these communications for a while. And I think there are some, reasons behind it. I think I may have seen a tweet from him. I can't remember the exact words. So he's probably off taking care of things somewhere else. And, it's falling on the lap of, the guy, Bruce, or whatever his name is. And so hopefully he's able to solve these issues, or whoever is working around this project with him, they're able to come together and solve this issue and actually allow for more builds to shine within the game. So that's pretty much my video. I want you guys to react in the comment section. Let me hear what you think about all of this. It's really weird how all of this stuff is going, even to the point of a funny build that another content creator just made. And I just laughed so hard because it's so awkward to even talk about it. But I guess I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you for your time and audience, and I'll see you guys in another video. Peace.